Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Let me start by welcoming everyone to what will be a series of valuable conversations in the lead up to the COP29 on the latest evidence for effective climate action. My name is Sabine Bernabè, World Bank Group Vice President and Director General of the Independent Evaluation Group at the World Bank, IEG. This event, Evidence for Climate Action, is a result of a collaboration between IEG and DEVAL, the German Institute for Development Evaluation. And we're delighted to have a range of speakers, from evaluators to practitioners across multiple organizations. Collaboration has become an ever more important issue in the face of multidimensional challenges such as climate change. There's a clear recognition amongst development organizations that only by leveraging each other's comparative advantages and by pooling knowledge and resources will we achieve the scale needed for sustained progress in the face of complex challenges. The same is true for evaluation. Working together, we can leverage more effectively the insights and lessons that we generate. We can help tackle these complex challenges by sharing our collective knowledge and ensuring that policies and interventions are based on unbiased, rigorous, and useful evidence of what works and what doesn't. This event aims to be a platform for precisely this kind of collaboration. Over the next 4 days, the event will bring together knowledge gathered from evaluations and practice in the field of climate change adaptation and mitigation from a range of experts who will discuss their findings and share their insights. Each session will focus on one of the priority themes of the upcoming COP29. Today's session will focus on how oceans, through the lens of the blue economy, today's sessions will focus on oceans through the lens of the blue economy. Tomorrow's session will focus on resilience. Wednesday will be dedicated to climate finance, and the final session on Thursday will look at balancing mitigation with economic growth. A common theme across the sessions is how to get to outcomes. There's been a lot of focus on measuring climate change inputs using a common methodology, but not on measuring results on the ground, especially for vulnerable populations. While it is early days for the blue economy, today's speakers will emphasize the importance of having a common framing amongst partners to enable the analysis of the many ways that sustainable ocean and marine development can contribute to climate change aims. Likewise, while the concept of resilience is now commonly understood, measuring resilience gains, especially at scale, has been difficult. This is due to the heterogeneity of local conditions and the variety of adaptation activities across sectors. Tomorrow's event will focus on approaches to meeting the challenges of measuring resilience. Our colleagues at DEVAL will present evidence on climate finance as delegates meet in Baku to discuss how to leverage and scale all forms of finance, including concessional, that is so important for debt-stricken countries. But equally important is the need to put in place mechanisms to track and ensure that promised funds are delivered and to measure how they are used. An emerging area that will benefit greatly from collaboration in the evaluation community is climate equity or the just transition. It will require all our agencies to consider how we assess the relevance and coherence of our client-facing engagements with a focus on balancing global mitigation aims with sustainable and inclusive growth. So we have an exciting lineup of speakers, and I hope you'll be able to join us for all the sessions. With that, let me hand over to today's moderator, for today's session, Carmen Nonay. Over to you, Carmen.
Thank you, Sabine, for those insightful opening remarks and for setting the stage for what really promises to be a series of valuable and informative discussions during this whole week. Hello, everybody. My name is Carmen Nonay. I am the Director of the Sustainable Development, Finance, Private Sector and Infrastructure Department at the Independent Evaluation Group here at the World Bank Group. And as Sabine mentioned, today's session is going to focus on the opportunities for climate action offered by transitioning into a blue economy approach. Before we go into our discussions, I really like to encourage everyone to engage with us on social media. So please use the hashtag E4CA. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Lauren Kelly. Lauren is our lead evaluation officer for the Infrastructure and Sustainable Development Unit in the Independent Evaluation Group. She will present lessons from IEG's recently published evaluation of the World Bank's support for the blue economy. And following Lauren's presentation, we're going to have an incredible discussion with a very energized and distinguished panel. I'd like to introduce them briefly now to you. We'll have Steve Fletcher, Professor of Ocean Policy and Economy at the University of Portsmouth and Director of Revolution Plastics and the Global Plastics Policy Center. We will also have Shanna Emmanuel, Program Officer for Environmental Sustainability at the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. And last but not least, we will have Ole Vestergaard, Program Officer for the Sustainable Blue Economy Initiative at the United Nations Environment Program. So without further ado, I will hand over to Lauren Kelly for the presentation. Lauren, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Carmen. Thank you, Sabine, for your elegant opening remarks, and welcome everyone to our Evidence for Climate Action event today. We are here to talk about the blue economy, and I'll have my colleagues share the screen. We're talking about the blue economy because IEG launched its first ever evaluation of the contribution of coastal and marine resources to sustainable development, including an analysis of what the blue economy means over the past year. It was the first time that IEG launched into such a topic, into ocean and marine issues, and really got into this idea of how can the blue economy as a concept contribute both to climate change aims and also to wider economic and social goals. Next. We did this, and as evaluators that tackle this for the first time, we also were amazed how much ocean and coastal and marine resources contribute to the life-sustaining services on Earth. I've always worked on green issues, and I'm not going to go over all of the facts, but as you can clearly see, the reason why everyone's focus needs to be on the contribution of ocean and coastal and marine resources is because they are an untapped opportunity to achieve climate change aims. This is the first thing we learned in our evaluation. It covers 71% of our planet's surface, home to over 90% of our species. They produce more than 60% of all oxygen. So when you think about climate action, think about oceans. This was the first thing that we learned. We also learned about the untapped potential of marine and coastal resources to achieve carbon sequestration and climate change adaptation goals. I worked on forests my whole career. Here I learned that acre by acre, mangroves store up to 4 times more carbon than terrestrial forests. So all the work we do on mangrove restoration and management really matters for climate change goals. Inherent to the well-managed coastal and ocean marine resources is the opportunities to achieve interlinked goals, sustainable economic development, jobs, food security, nutrition security, and sustainable growth. So just to say, this is an incredibly important topic for climate action. Joy, next slide. Next slide. So why did we do the evaluation? We did the evaluation because the World Bank is an institution and many of our partners are shifting from looking at the development of ocean and coastal resources in a more siloed or sector-based approach towards a more integrated approach. And that was the first thing that we really explored. The nature of the blue economy is threefold. The nature of the blue economy is such that it is imperative that we seek to achieve healthy ocean and coastal resources. because that health of the ocean and the health of our coastal resources underpin inclusive and equitable economic growth. The two have to go hand in hand. We also learned that without a blue economy approach, without having a shift from these sector-led to integrated approaches, that we will not be able to achieve the win-wins that are inherent in achieving climate change goals. What does this entail? This entails doing business differently. It entails shifting sector approaches. It entails, supporting sector coordination, and that sector coordination can therefore then identify synergies between sectors. It can help governments to manage trade-offs among different competing resource users and to achieve, through those synergies, more win-wins through the contribution of ocean and coastal resources to achieve climate change goals. I'll say one more thing as you're shifting the slides. There is a sense of urgency. The last thing we learned in this evaluation, you can go ahead, that's fine. We want to move. The last thing that we learned was that the oceans are polluted. Steve will talk about, I think, a little bit about plastics, but that we met this, when we came into this evaluation and the world came into shifting to a blue economy approach, it did so because the intense and incredible amount of mismanagement, policy failures, and pollution, and inattention to some of these really critical issues that underpin sustainable economic development in our ocean and coastal and marine areas. So what are some of the things that we found in the evaluation? We found that if a blue economy lens is applied to the development, the sustainable development of ocean and coastal resources, that we can achieve win-wins. And I'm going to name 4 ways that that can happen and 4 ways that we can draw the attention of the blue economy and its potential to policymakers as they move into discussions in Baku. And the first is that any development of ocean and coastal marine areas using a blue economy approach needs to pay attention to the critical need for spatial engagement, spatial analysis, and sector transformations. We're all economists here, or development specialists, or evaluators, and I think no one's new to the idea that development is spatial. But particularly for the blue economy, we are talking about a concept called ridge to reef. And all that means is that everything that happens upstream, whether it's logging or bad agricultural practices or deforestation, has an intense effect on what happens downstream. It has a severe impact on ocean ecosystems and the ability of our ocean ecosystems to contribute to climate change goals. So we can't look at ocean and coastal resources in isolation. We must look at them spatially, and therefore evaluation must take a systems level approach. Next slide. And the same thing, and I won't go through every sector, but this evaluation covered 4 critical sectors. Okay, we covered areas that are really critical to the blue economy, including fisheries and tourism and marine transport and infrastructure and plastics and pollution. And in that, what you can see is that as we move through these sector transformations and as we learn how to evaluate, analyze, and bring data back into this discussion, we learn that that whole system has to shift in order to support the blue economy, in order to support climate change goals. So what does that mean? For example, sustainable tourism would require an analysis of and support for coastal and marine tourism that is cognizant of environmental issues with regard to water use, wastewater management, etc., and low carbon footprint activities that really support our low carbon growth strategies in the countries we support. Next slide. I have 2 to 3 more points before we go back to the panel. And my third point in this presentation is really about what we found when it came to where are we right now with the blue economy and the work of our multilateral development banks, including the one we looked at, which is the World Bank. And what we see very clearly is that institutions, and we looked at the World Bank, are moving towards a blue economy approach. Many of our diagnostics that help clients to set out their climate change and development goals are now beginning to integrate blue economy themes into those diagnostic reports. However, we are still in early days, because those early days mean that we are referring to a blue economy approach, but we are not fully tapping the potential of the blue economy to help clients achieve their nationally determined contributions, including through planned activities. For example, I mentioned attention to mangroves, even in countries where those countries are prioritizing a blue economy approach, including through developing their own strategies. We have a speaker here today from the OECS that is working at a regional level that is helping clients to do that. And regional organizations and our organizations have a lot to do with helping clients get to that end goal. Next slide. Lastly, before I end my presentation, I want to say that we hope that our evaluation and its findings can support more enhanced dialogue throughout the ocean dialogue within the COP. One thing we do point to, as I've discussed in my presentation, is the necessity of thinking about a transformational and integrated approach for the blue economy. We are excited to see that ocean issues are now prominent in the COP29 discussions, but we also want to point out that we think there's also room to continue to enhance the dialogue around the integrated nature of the blue economy and how it contributes to all of the issues you see on the screen. This is a screenshot of the talks that will take place in a couple of weeks. Indeed, there's human ocean, there's planet ocean, there's future ocean. But we believe that blue economy is not just blue resilience or blue adaptation or blue finance on the next screen, but we believe blue economy, as we have learned about it, you can see, I think blue economy is somewhere here in finance. We believe that too often, because it's the word blue economy, it's attributed to maybe some blue finance, maybe some blue bonds, or maybe some innovative finance. And you've seen a lot of that coming to the fore lately, particularly through the COPs. But we believe that through our evaluation and our analysis, we show that an integrated approach, meaning the blue economy approach, can achieve many untapped climate change action goals. Last slide. And before I turn to my speakers, I just want to say that hopefully you have a link to our evaluation. If it's not, the chat will provide one. But as you use that evaluation and read that evaluation, you'll see that we go through a lot of pains to show what works in some of the countries where we worked. And what works really is a focus on thinking about that integrated nature of the blue economy, identifying the kind of policy, strategy, and institutional needs of our clients, and helping them to sort of get started and work through their own strategy and institutional development to be able to lay the platform to implement a more integrated and holistic approach. Again, we have OECS colleagues here today. We point out that the Eastern Caribbean, with the help of the OECS, was especially, how do I say this, Shanna, a thought leader in this space. And they have a lot to teach us also from the point of view of small island developing states. But we can do better, and we have a lot of work to do as evaluators to help bring data forward to help clients develop these goals. Thank you so much for giving me the chance to present our evaluation. And now I'll turn to Carmen, who will facilitate the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. I think this was a great and concise presentation. And now we are ready to engage with our great panel. And I want to go to Steve first. You have heard Lauren in her presentation saying that we found in our evaluation in IG that there is no single definition for blue economy. So why is it important for global actors to align on a definition to reach an agreement, frameworks, and metrics? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you very much, Carmen, and thank you, Lauren, for a great exposition of what was a very significantly large evaluation report. So great stuff. Well, in many parts of the world, you're in a situation where multiple countries have access to the same ocean basin. If you think of the Mediterranean, for example, there are over 20 countries bordering the Mediterranean Sea. And because the ocean is a highly connected ecosystem, the actions of any one actor around that ocean space can affect the interests of any other actor by practices or pollution events that damage critical ecosystem functions, for example. So instead of that, we need aligned collective action to ensure the health of the underlying ocean ecosystem and at the same time deliver climate benefits. So what we're looking to do, and what was a clear message through the evaluation, was that transitioning to a more aligned, joined up approach to managing ocean spaces can be achieved through a blue economy lens. So at present, and your question is right, Carmen, at present, there is a wide range of interpretations of what the blue economy is. And that really comes through strongly in the evaluation report. What we found is that a lot of definitions of the blue economy still emphasize economic growth as the main purpose of the blue economy. And that narrow definition risks weak outcomes and missed opportunities for a whole range of other areas and topics and interests that relate to the blue economy, including climate action. So in reality, I think what we need is an approach to the blue economy that enhances ecosystem functionality, that supports social well-being and equity, and that has synergies with other development priorities, including action to tackle biodiversity loss and, of course, action to tackle climate change. So that implies very strongly we need a much more holistic understanding and definition of what the blue economy is and how it reflects its connections to a broader set of issues. So it's really beginning to see the blue economy approach as the way into tackling critical marine and coastal resource challenges, and at the same time supporting national development trajectories and tackling climate change, biodiversity loss, and of course pollution as well. So as a minimum, I think what we need is a common understanding of the potential contribution that the blue economy approach can make is. And that would include alignment of the ambition around a blue economy. So again, going way beyond simply economic benefit, but also to include other things like, as I say, biodiversity loss and climate change, but also jobs and social well-being, just transitions, lots of other, those sorts of outcomes as well that are not just about the basic economic growth agenda that the blue economy often focuses on. I guess the final couple of points I'd make in my answer, Carmen, is that pragmatically, if we have different agencies investing in blue economy schemes, using different definitions and measurement schemes and seeking different outcomes, there'll just be continued inconsistency, and there'll be a lack of alignment between what we're trying to achieve around shared ocean basins. So in my opinion, really, it's really important that countries sharing the same ocean basin, they do adopt aligned frameworks and investments, and the blue economy is a way of framing that alignment. Thanks, Carmen.
Thanks so much, Steve, and you really explain why there should be a collective action for blue economy. So I like to turn it now to Shanna. You work for the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. For the members, it's very, very important the focus on climate change. And you guys are a thought leader already in the blue economy space. Can you tell us how, from the OECS, you're using the blue economy approach for really developing a common strategy for climate action among your members?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. So great to be on this wonderful webinar when we're talking about these very important issues ahead of COP29. So as Carmen just said, I do work with the OECS, which stands for Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. We are an intergovernmental organization comprising of 11 member states, 6 independent countries, 3 British overseas territories, and 2 French departments. We are considered the small of the small in the Caribbean, and that actually has been an opportunity for us. We don't call ourselves small island developing states. We actually refer to ourselves as large ocean states, because for most of our countries, we actually have found that we are at least 11 times, our ocean space is at least 11 times the size of our land space. And so we know that oceans are going to always play a vital role in our lives and livelihoods. And as such, we are hoping that they also help us with our climate action. And so how OECS has been working with its member states to be able to both have climate action occur, but also maintain our blue economy thrust. Because for us, like I said, the blue economy, large ocean states, the blue economy is our economy for many of us. And so in 2015, with the support of the World Bank, we actually developed the first Eastern Caribbean regional ocean policy. It was one of the earliest regional ocean policies. And it covered a wide variety of topics and looked at how we could use the blue economy to further our development. In 2022, we actually revised that ECROP. And one of the things that was missing from that first version was climate action and looking at how the blue economy could possibly help us with our climate action. And so the revised ECROP, which was approved by our heads of state in 2024, has 8 general outcomes, and outcome number 7 is resilience in the region is strengthened to mitigate the effects of climate-related hazards and environmental changes. And this was where we sought to really put down policy goals that would help the region start to move towards looking at how our blue economy could facilitate climate action in lots of different ways. For example, we sought to look at ways in which we could use the blue economy as part of things like national adaptation plans. So as we support our countries in their adaptation planning, we ensure that looking at oceans and ocean spaces, coastal environments is part of that, and that you look at how you adapt to climate risk by having those ecosystem-based adaptation kind of measures included in your national adaptation plans. We also support countries in things like their integrated coastal zone management plans. And so as they start to do those plans, we ensure that there are things like climate change included and taking into consideration climate changes that we expect to see. Another one of the policy goals that we had under our ECROP was the restoring and conserving of coastal ecosystems. Lauren had already mentioned the ridge to reef. In this region, we actually call it the island systems management approach, because for us, ridge to reef is basically what we have in a small island state. And so we ensure that all parts of our ecosystems, as integrated as they are restored where there's degradation, but also conserved where we know that they are healthy and thriving. We seek to conserve them. That's through things like marine spatial planning and ensuring that there still are areas that remain, if utilized to ensure that they are healthy and thriving at all times. This also helps build the resilience of our communities, and of course, protecting key assets. Most islands, tourism is a very significant part of our economy, and therefore assets like the sun, the sea, sand, all those things need to be maintained. And one of the ways we do that is ensuring that as we build resilience, we also restore and conserve these coastal ecosystems. The kind of third goal that we have is to ensure that we have a great understanding of potential impacts of climate change. This is mostly through research, but working through other organizations. The World Meteorological Organization has been helping our countries come up with scenarios for the future of what climate change could bring for us, and ensuring that our ecosystems, again, are able to adapt to some of the changes that we're seeing, because we know that having healthy ecosystems is a very important part of our climate action into this region. So in closing, just ensuring that both island system management and ecosystem-based adaptations approaches are mainstreamed into coastal planning and decision-making processes, and also to ensure that we coordinate regionally. And this, again, allows for national actions to be taken. So we have a regional coordination mechanism that allows us to speak to all our countries, and then they go back. We kind of do models, and each country goes back and implements those models for what we have. So this is how we have been working to have climate action happen through blue economy approaches. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Shanna. And I think you put it very nicely and connected with what Steve talked about, the collective action. You mentioned how to coordinate regionally is very important for the healthy ecosystems that you're trying to build in the Caribbean. So I think this is a good segue to go to Ole to tell us from the point of view of the UNEP, how are you supporting a sustainable blue economy? I know you have the so-called Sustainable Blue Economy Initiative. Can you tell us more about what does that entail? What is the evidence behind that initiative? And how does that connect to climate outcomes?
Yeah, thanks for that, Carmen, and thank you also to Lauren and the Elevation Group to take on this evaluation, this topic, and inviting our input. So in short, UNEP's Sustainable Blue Economy Initiative aims to support countries to transition towards more integrated systems to support sustainable, resilient, and equitable blue economy, as was just framed by Lauren in the opening. There's increasing evidence that this need for a more integrated approach. It's being recognized that blue economy is more than economics. It really delivers a range of societal benefits, including environmental benefits, climate regulation, and social benefits and human well-being. There was a study a few years back from the high-level panel on sustainable ocean economy that indicated that investing in healthy oceans generates 5 times return, both economic, but particularly environmental and social and health benefits, climate mitigation, food security, and well-being. And last year, G20 adopted the high-level principles for sustainable economy. But I think also increasingly countries are wondering how to move towards a more sustainable blue economy and are maybe struggling in making it practical and real. So our Blue Economy Initiative aims to help countries to address this gap or this struggle. We see an increasing interest in environmental sustainability of blue economy, securing the primary asset, and also how sustainable blue economy enable nature-based solutions, which is key for as a climate solution. In short, we can see that the blue economy offers a mechanism that overcome the current, often disconnected way our ocean is being managed. And it does support a more holistic whole of government approach. But again, how are countries turning it into practice? How to practically enable this blue economy on the ground. So we have developed a guiding framework. We call it the Sustainable Blue Economy Transition Framework that makes the policy coherence across a number of blue economy policy areas more practical and visible and tangible. And it includes 4 core elements that integrated blue economy can deliver. It offers a more customizable process across the government to develop a nationally relevant pathway to blue economy. And as I mentioned, it has 4 main guiding principles or core elements that guides this decision towards changing unsustainable uses and practices towards more sustainable ones. And those 4 elements include a blue economy that protects and restores and regenerates healthy ecosystems. It ensures equitable and inclusive processes and outcomes. It does importantly enables climate stability and resilience, and it delivers sustainable consumption and production using circular economy approaches, with also reducing waste and pollution. So these 4 elements of the blue economy planning framework are being developed in coherence, and we can set measurable progress markers for each policy areas and build them into an overall framework. Of course, those 4 elements are connected. Climate change is a major cause of biodiversity loss, but at the same time, effective protection and restoration of biodiversity can also contribute to mitigation, the impact of climate change and improving resilience. So when designing blue economy pathways, exploring the interdependencies between these sectors across the land and sea, using, as mentioned, ridge-to-reef approaches or land-sea planning or sustainable ocean planning, we can develop an integrated approach in delivering multiple sustainable development objectives. In short, the framework enables a country or a stakeholder to develop a number of tools to guide the process. It develops a system links and dynamics map. It provides an integrated blue economy policy framework. It provides an assessment of the enabling conditions, ranging from governance, the use of science, leadership, stakeholder engagement, and finance into a coherent approach. And it also helps a country to develop a costed work plan or blue economy action plan that can help form some sort of a menu of actions that they can prioritize and draw in various sectors and various investments. So I'm happy to provide more details, and I'll leave it with that for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Ole. And I think you brought a good practicality with the 4 core elements, including how you talk about the interconnection that it has to happen among sectors, which really speaks to the systems approach that Lauren was talking about in her presentation. So what I like to do now, this is our first round with the panel. I want to have a second and last round before we will open it up for questions that I know the large audience, we have over 300 people, are putting in the chat. So we're going to go quick on this second round, and I want to actually turn it to Shanna again. Could you share with us some of the lessons that you have from the OECS on what it takes to really to adapt this multi-sector approach that Ole was talking about? What is really a whole of the economy approach, and how can one make blue economy the new economic paradigm for climate action?
Thanks, Carmen. So this is a very valid question, and I think for us in the region, one of the number one things has been consultation. And in building out our regional blue economy policy, regional ocean policy, which really underpins our blue economy strategy, what we really did was sit down and speak to everybody that's part of what we consider the blue economy. And this included everyone from, of course, tourism stakeholders, and not just hotels, but speaking to the cruise ship industry, the airline industry, of course, the various ministries, as they are the ones kind of coordination on a national level, but also speaking into regional organizations that support each of our industries, speaking to our ports, airports, seaports authorities to ensure that they are part of the conversation, because they also have to build resilience into their infrastructure, looking at the city planning in various countries, urban planners in various countries, and talking about how they were also including climate considerations as they planned for their various islands. Also speaking to our ministries of economic development and finance on how the countries were going to move forward. What was our plan for development financing, and was climate change being considered as we built along our coastlines, as we continued to look at areas for further future development, etc. Speaking to places like Ministry of Housing about where they considered would be next areas to kind of go into, and how was that going to impact eventually the blue space. And it's really having this kind of open and constant dialogue that has allowed us to be able to kind of say, listen, it's not just a blue economy approach. This is our economic approach, and everything we do has to ensure that we maintain environmental integrity while we build our economies up, that we also ensure that we do put climate considerations on the table as we plan for the various sectors. So it takes quite a bit of effort, I'm not going to lie. But one of the things that we did, that we institutionalized from first starting, OECS kind of pushed for the countries to develop national ocean committees. And those committees were multi-sectoral. They had a lot of the players at the table. Most of our countries already had very much multi-sector national climate change committees, and those climate change committees kind of were the intersection of these two strategies that we were trying to put together. So we encouraged both of them to talk to each other. That's very important at the national level. Then at the regional level, which is kind of what we can control, we ensure that both the climate change team, which I'm a part of, but I also support the oceans team. My background is in marine biology, so I support both teams. And so we ensure that when we have our regional committee meetings, that we invite each other to meetings and we talk across different topics, because it does get siloed sometimes at a national level, so they don't always know what each other is doing. And so what we aimed to do as a regional institution is to bring them together. So oftentimes the climate change team would present at the regional ocean governance team meetings and vice versa. We ensure that that happens so that national key stakeholders are always informed of what's happening in the various countries. It does take a bit of coordination, but I think without that, we're not going to get the best, the most successful outcome out of this. We also ensure that at things like our annual Council of Ministers meeting, which is Ministers of the Environment, who in most of our countries have the ocean portfolio, that they are aware of some of the key initiatives that are going on. So we invite people like the World Bank to come to use that platform to present the work that they're doing in oceans and in climate change. And sometimes when it's the nexus between them, wonderful. So that people, so that our ministers, the decision makers, are aware of what's happening in the space. And our ministerial meetings are very much all the topics of environment. And so we ensure that everybody's kind of kept aware of what's happening. And of course, we have champions for the various topics, ministers who champion the various topics. And we work directly with them and their teams to ensure that on an international level, that the issues that are most important to us get amplified and get heard on an international level. Apart from that, since 2020, the OECS has been facilitating what we call the Blue Economy Roundtable discussions. And this really is a forum that's designed to raise interest and then drive investment in oceans. And it has now included both oceans and climate considerations. And we really are using this roundtable discussion that we kind of hold annually. We just had another one a month ago. And we really bring together a lot of the stakeholders, investors, policymakers, industry leaders. They come, they connect, share insights, and then we explore future collaborations or opportunities for collaboration that could come in to continue to drive the growth of the blue economy, but also resilience within the blue economy overall. And so it's really using all the possible tools at hand to be able to bring the blue economy to the forefront, but also to be able to share lessons learned. And those lessons can be positive or negative. We take all lessons and learn from them to share new initiatives and opportunities that the countries could decide if they want to be a part of, and having these different forums. So I would say consultation is very important. Having somebody to coordinate both nationally and regionally and working together on that, and being very, very deliberate in how we coordinate is also important. And then creating this kind of platform for learning, for knowledge sharing, for just collaborating and forming partnerships. Those are some of the things that we at OECS have done in order to be able to facilitate the growth in the blue economy, and also including climate action in that.
Thank you so much, Shanna. And I want to go back now to Steve. And I want to tap into your knowledge as the director of the Revolution Plastics, I love that name, and the Global Plastics Policy Center, because we all know that marine plastic pollution has reached crisis levels in the world. It's undermining really the potential of the blue economy, and it's reducing the ocean's capacity for climate, both mitigation and resilience. So you've been involved, I know, in negotiations for a global treaty to tackle marine plastic pollution. Can you tell us, how do we ensure that countries have timely and relevant evidence to bring to those negotiation tables that you're sitting in related to plastic pollution and the climate objectives? What can we do in terms of bringing evidence?
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. It's a tricky question. I mean, the first thing to say, of course, is that 99% of all plastics are fossil fuel based. So there's a saying that we sometimes use that action on plastic pollution is action on climate, or is climate action. And so the two are very intimately connected with each other. The other point to recognize is the plastics value chain or life cycle is truly global. And so it's often quite difficult to know exactly where the right place is to intervene in a complicated life cycle, to know where to reduce plastic pollution effectively. So evidence becomes a really critical tool in understanding the complex web of connections in the plastics economy, and then understanding what interventions are likely to work and why they're likely to work, and then where to apply them in that complex global system. Because applying what appear to be the right interventions in the wrong place or the wrong way can generate all sorts of unexpected outcomes that sort of are actively unhelpful sometimes. The final negotiation meeting for the Plastics Treaty actually takes place later this month, directly after Climate COP29. So, I mean, to take your question directly, how do we get evidence on the table for that meeting? Well, I would say it may already be too late for that. I mean, there may be new evidence that can get on the table before now and the end of the month, but I don't know. So perhaps, if I may, the critical question might be how to ensure there is relevant evidence to inform the implementation of the treaty, assuming a treaty is agreed and negotiations are successful in the final meeting. Of course, because the treaty isn't agreed, the exact evidence needs are not 100% clear at the moment. But what I can say is to sort of generalize a little bit. If we're trying to generate a coherent evidence base to monitor the implementation of the Global Plastics Treaty, it's critically important that that treaty helps generate some common goals around what countries are seeking to achieve from their action to tackle plastic pollution, that those common goals feed into a global goal, that there are common definitions around key words, even words like plastic and plastic pollution. And what do we mean by certain types of intervention, like a reuse scheme or a refill scheme? All of these things are interpreted in lots of different ways. And of course, we need shared metrics to measure success. I mean, is success simply a reduction in plastic pollution, or is it all sorts of other things, including a just transition for informal waste workers, or greater resilience for small island communities from plastic pollution? So evidence to fill this framework requires agreed methodologies and approaches that ensures consistency and in data quality. And ideally, what I'd also like to see is some independent scrutiny of that evidence by an objective and conflict-free panel of, the word scientists is always used, but I prefer to use sort of evidence specialists, because there's from a whole range of different disciplines, not just natural science. So people working across disciplines, scrutinizing that evidence that's relevant to plastic pollution. My final comment, Carmen, is that the complexity of the plastics life cycle means that things change really quickly. And whatever metrics that we use, they need to be sensitive to early changes, and that they have thresholds built in that enable us to trigger action as soon as those thresholds are passed. Thank you, Carmen. Back to you.
Thank you so much. And I think this is a good segue to my last question for Ole. You were talking about how to integrate blue economy based on your initiative in the UNEP. Can you tell us what kind of principles you're using in terms of policy making? Because it really requires a strong evidence. So how is UNEP working with coastal nations to build that capacity for the evidence-informed decision-making and implementation that is so much needed?
Thanks for that. Yeah, we UNEP are working with the countries and region Cs with a range of capacity building efforts to enhance science-based decision-making and implementation. And various forms of monitoring and evaluation are key pillars in both environmental, social, and economic monitoring. Could use blue carbon as an example. Measuring the diverse impact and outcomes of a blue carbon approach is essential. So here in Kenya, for instance, UNEP has been supporting local coastal communities in mangrove management and restoration, generating climate credits that feed back to the communities, which require extensive technical methods and capacity building. So from using approved measures and metrics for assessing the mangrove growth and conditions and carbon sequestration sort of additionality, to social monitoring system to track equitable distribution of those carbon elements, and then of course economic measurements and financial system to track how the finances are flowing. In terms of building capacity for the wider sort of holistic approach to blue economy, there's an increasing focus on really mapping and measuring the economic value of nature. And there are many ecosystem services that are being provided by ecosystems for healthy oceans. And I think we see an important progress in a number of tools to track natural capital, environmental accounts that countries are embedding and embedding into the national statistical processes, the system of global ocean accounting, for instance. And lastly, one common overarching tool we are developing and piloting is what we call the Sustainable Blue Economy Readiness Assessment Tool, which is really a policy knowledge support tool that provides a way of early engagement with the country or a group of stakeholders to mobilize engagement across different sectors and identify priority actions and bring in various streams of knowledge into this sort of common planning a process. And it can help build policy coherence and configure the institutional framework, both at the government and local government level, and identify how a more joined-up delivery can be managed. So it provides a structured approach to connect policy areas and various types of information. And importantly, it helps in a way priority setting of the capacity building efforts, because of course there are capacity needs across many different disciplines and sectors, but it gives a simple sort of semi-qualitative measure on where are a country today vis-a-vis governance, data systems, stakeholder engagement, and so it can really help steer investments in capacity building. We have been piloting in a few countries now, and more is on its way. But for instance, in Caribbean, in Antigua, Barbuda, and Trinidad and Tobago, we have been having some pilot sessions on this tool. We think it's a key piece for, as I mentioned before, bringing the transition into practice. So just to note here, there's also a number of more sort of technical tools, and I think where we see an important progress is really measurement of cumulative environmental impacts, which has always been a bit of a challenge, and measuring trade-offs and impact on a common environmental sort of status. But I think a lot of progress there, including a number of GIS and online portals that can assist that into a more practical way. Thanks.
Thank you, Ole. And now I'd like to take a question that was put in the chat. I'd like to ask Steve. The question was, could you elaborate, and if I could ask you to be quite brief, because I still have a really punchy question that I want all of you to answer before we close the session. So what is the link between the circular economy, the blue economy, and other nature investment goals? If you could take just a minute or 2 minutes to brainstorm with us, what do you think is the link between these three?
Yeah, thanks, Carmen. That's a tough question to throw in at the end. So the circular economy is an approach to how we manage resources in a much more resource efficient way, and I think if you view that then as a kind of a philosophy to which we approach the management of any type of resource, then I think it's possible to say that we can adopt a circular approach or a circular economy approach to how we manage ocean resources. And I think it's not a commonly discussed sort of interpretation or application space for the circular economy. I don't think, but actually it could really be. And I think certainly I know in your work with UNEP that the circular economy approach to managing ocean resources has come up quite a lot, hasn't it, in terms of the discussions around that. So I think, Carmen, it's kind of an underutilized opportunity, I think, and that would feed into positive outcomes certainly for plastic pollution, but also for climate action as well, and many, many other things too.
Thank you. And we will be happy also to share with the audience because, as you said, we have done quite a bit of work in both on the circular economy as well as in other areas related to nature investments. And Lauren has been one of the leading some of these evaluations. So now we have about 6 minutes before we close this, and I want to move into a lightning round addressing the big topic behind what we're doing this week, which is COP29. So I'm going to ask each of the panelists, and I'm also going to ask you, Lauren, sorry to put you on the spot, 1 minute maximum, or maybe a little bit less for each of you, based on the discussion we have had here today. Could you just, in 1 or 2 sentences, answer what is the key evidence that you would like to see policymakers to take on to COP29 when they go to Baku in a couple of weeks' time? So let me start now really quick with Shanna, then we'll go to Lauren, to Ole, and Steve. Go ahead.
Thanks, Carmen. I think for me, at least for us within the OECS in our countries, one of the big major topics we're going to have to talk about is climate finance and how that then drives our economy changes, how it drives blue economy work, especially in terms of research, because climate finance has not touched research as much as it needs to. So for me, that would be the major thing I would like policymakers to take into Baku, that we are going to get that new finance goal, and that finance goal is going to include work that needs to be done to ensure that we know the impacts that we are preparing for in the region. Thanks.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I think I'm up next.
Yeah.
I would say, thank you for the question. Integration. In one word, integration. If we can set a benchmark, and if the World Bank can help be a standard bearer, together with its partners that help to build capacity in the UNEP, regional organizations that help clients develop their strategies and implement them, and scientists such as Steve in academia to help bring it all together, then if the blue economy were be successful, and if we were to talk about successfully, what you would see is a movement toward the implementation of national strategies that focus on intersectoral coordination and integration. Thank you.
Ole?
Yeah, thanks for that. I certainly agree on the integration. I think in short, I mean, the world is not going to achieve net zero without implementing every tool and available. And I think nature-based climate solutions are going to be a critical role in this journey. The first global stocktake on the Paris Agreement has recognized the vital role of oceans and coastal ecosystem in supporting adaptation to climate change, and also highlights the importance of and potential co-benefits of integrated multi-sectoral solutions. So UNEP supports the ambition to include ocean action in next generation NDCs and related efforts. I think the blue economy approach is a key framework to help that, and we can only welcome enhanced ambition on NDCs, and maybe the work in COP29 can lay the foundation. Thanks for that.
Great. And last but not least, Steve.
Yeah, thanks. The piece of evidence I'd like to take to COP29 is directly from the blue economy evaluation, actually, which clearly shows that blue economy approaches are consistent with both climate action and action to tackle plastic pollution, but as yet, the blue economy approach isn't fully utilized in that space and could make a huge difference. Thanks.
Thank you. So I think to wrap up, I think your messages were very clear about COP29. 4 important messages out of the discussion today that came. Collective action is more important than ever to get to the climate action, which is really the biggest challenge for us as we work in development, but also for the future generations. Ambition was also put on the table about the blue economy approach, a systems approach that we really need to be pushing, and bringing even more evidence to the countries. So with that, I want to bring this session to the end today. Please give me a virtual applause for everybody, and stay tuned for other events that we're having. Here you see the one already for tomorrow. Hopefully you will join us. It's at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time in the United States. And please, again, a virtual thanks and applause to all the panelists and the presenter, and to Sabine for her opening remarks. Until tomorrow, everybody.